Welcome to the Rocha Revolution, by the way. Here we're sidebarring. And there was a famous reporter for the Washington Post who retired 2 weeks ago named Dan Balls.
Oh, yeah.
And Dan, I showed up in a black, remember those Letterman jackets? So I had a black Letterman jacket, but instead of having the letter of my high school, I had the Steelworkers logo on it because the union guys used to run in packs and we wore what we said was our colors, right?
Yeah.
So I had the black on with the gold. And I showed up and I was like, I'm the labor director for Dick Gephardt for president. He said, shit, you're right out of central casting, big boy. Woo!
My new political party, Chuck, needs that central casting today, baby.
That's right. Yeah, we did it in a bad way. Thanks, everybody, for getting on here. We're getting a critical mass together. I am honored this week to be joined by my good friend, Joe Walsh, who has been raising a lot of hell and in a good way and causing a lot of what we say in the Democratic Party a little good trouble, which we should have been doing for a long time. And I think it would be good for my listeners to know, give us a little backstory. Tell folks where you come from. You should know he was a former Republican. He was a former congressman. I think all kinds of shit. So give the folks your 5-minute elevator on who the hell you
are. Chuck, it'll take 30 seconds. From the Tea Party to the Democratic Party in 12 years. That's been, I mean, what a fucking journey, right? That's been my journey the past 12 years. I was one of the faces and voices of the Tea Party. I went to D.C. to raise hell. We didn't raise hell. Then along came Trump a few years later. I was a big right-wing talker. I voted for Trump in 2016. Then he gets elected. I start to pay attention to him. And I said, this is batshit crazy and bad for America. So I turned against Trump 7-8 years ago, publicly took a blowtorch to my career. I've been an outspoken never Trumper ever since, left the Republican Party 5 years ago. But then, Chuck, after Trump won this past November, I'm an old fart. I said, I got maybe a few years left. I'm going to do all I can to defeat my former party. And I just felt like I could be of more value if I joined the only other game in town, that's the Democratic Party, to help them defeat the Republican Party. So here I sit today. I've been a Democrat for 2 months.
Well, you got a lot of messing up to do if you're going to be in my party. I'm just going to tell people where you hailed from. Where was your congressional seat?
Far northwest suburbs of Chicago, went up to the Wisconsin border. So a lot of rural and some suburban. It was a swing district. I won that year, the Tea Party year, when, a couple of years after the Dems passed Obamacare and there was an uprising. And by the way, the Democrats who passed Obamacare back then, they knew it was going to hurt them politically in 2010, but they believed it was a good bill, good policy. These Republicans now, Chuck, who passed this big, beautiful bill, big, ugly bill just a little bit ago, they know it should hurt them politically next year, and they don't even think it's a good bill.
They think it's so much that they would go into Texas in middle cycle and try to game the system for 5 more seats because they're worried. They're not that stupid. They know that the American people are not going to like what's in that bill. And I think that that's something really interesting. I was reading polling this morning, and you know that my firm is the largest Latino-owned firm in the country. I've hired and trained 133 young Latino and Black kids in my firm, and we are all about doing a lot of work in the Latino space. A lot of our work is there. Equis and Equis Lab had just released some mid-cycle polling and follow-up on some polling they had done in April of 24. They're doing it every 3 months with Latinos who voted for Donald Trump, because we are trying to get a better understanding of what did the Democrats do that sucked so bad that you would vote for Donald Trump, and what would it take to get you back? So we're trying to learn this, right? And we asked them about this big bullshit bill, and 76% of these are not Democrats, and these are not dyed-in-the-wool Republicans. These are marginal swing Latinos, so they're the exact Latinos you want. And at 78%, they were like, we're worried about these cuts to things that we have paid into. They understand they pay into Medicaid, Medicare, because they're all working. Ain't none of these people on unemployment. So I think that to the point that you're making is that I remember Nancy Pelosi literally making Democrats walk the plank on that bill, and they suffered. And that's how you and lots of folks got elected.
Yes.
True?
Oh, completely true, Chuck. That's the only reason I got elected. That's the only reason we had that Tea Party wave. But again, to your point, the Republicans who voted for this bill, and I talked to a few of them privately, to a man and a woman, they don't like this bill. So they walk the plank for Trump, not because they believed in the bill. And if the Democrats, if we can get our act together, you know better than anybody, they should. Republicans should pay a big price for it next year.
What's going to happen, I've been talking about this a lot on TV and on different podcasts, is that Democrats, and listen to me, all you Democrats, even those of you who have only been in our party for 2 months, Joe, is that we have to do a better job at communicating to voters. We've done a shitty job at making our case, and then you see somebody like a carnival barker like Trump come in and take up all the oxygen in the room. And then when you have a lackluster party who's kind of rested on the laurels of walking away from working families, as I would say, you have a void where you have these podcasts and other things that just fill this gap. And you start losing at the edges. And you're going to see, and I promise you, I've been an ad maker for 30 years, you're going to see ads come out from Republicans that say, we are protecting, we've got this border under control. We're putting military in the streets of these cities to clean up these cities. And we'll get to that, Joe, with DC. And we've passed the biggest bill and tax cut for working Americans where you're not going to have to pay taxes on tips or taxes on your overtime. They won't tell you that it sunsets. They won't tell you that it's got a minimal cap, but we'll allow them, if we're stupid, to take that narrative while we're saying, and it's a good thing for us to say, is that they're cutting Medicaid, Medicare, and they're going to eliminate SNAP for thousands of hungry children. This will be the argument heading into the midterms. Do you agree?
I do. And Chuck, it's a really interesting problem. Donald Trump lies as he breathes. We've never faced anything like this. Most of my former Republican colleagues have learned from Trump, so they lie. We've never seen this level of dishonesty. So, Democrats, what do you do with that? Because you just rattled it off. They're going to lie about this bill. They're lying about everything. How do you fight that? To me, Chuck, that's a fascinating question. And I think the key word there is fight, 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 fight.
I think about this a lot because I have lots of clients who are trying to figure out this piece. And what I've said is the American people aren't stupid. There's a group of them you can't never talk out of Donald Trump, just like there's a group of them you'll never talk to voting for any Republican. There's these dyed-in-the-wool Dems. The right and left of the party will be there. But the folks in the middle, I think you could show up and say, look, I get that you're frustrated and that the Democrats may have walked away from some of our core messaging and the values that built this party. I'll always go back to work, working families, faith, all these things that bring us together as a community. Donald Trump likes to pick at what little things draw us apart, but there's way more that draws people together. And when you show up with somebody and say, look, watch what they do, not what they say. And here's what they have done to you. They voted for this thing. They've appointed this people. They're stealing this money. They won't release these files. They don't care about you. The only people they care about is themselves. And they've proved it in their actions.
Yeah.
And that's only half of it. That's how you win an election, by firing the person in charge. That's what you should. Then here's the part that Democrats have to get better at, which is, and this is our vision and what we want to do to make your life better. We want to get more money into your pocket. We want to get you better health care. We want to work on the education and go back to the basic core values of who we are as Americans around faith, family, jobs, education, and the American dream. This aspiration we've walked away from because we've gotten out here on the fringes of all these parties. And I think that's how you get them back, Joe.
I just wish, Chuck, I wish everybody in my new party sounded like you. I'm pulling my hair out today because you probably saw that New York Times piece. Democrats are hemorrhaging voters. In the 30 states that where you have to declare Democrat or Republican, Democrat voter registration is way down in all 30 states. And Republican voter registration is up in all 30 states the last 4 to 5 years. This is just killing me because I know how bad my former party is. But it goes to what I heard every day last year campaign for Kamala Harris. And I know you heard similar stuff. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, all these voters in the middle, they'd tell me the same fucking thing. Joe, I know Trump's an asshole. I know he's a bad guy, but the Democrats look down on me. They don't understand me. Chuck, I heard a variation of that from the middle in every battleground state I went into. I think my new party lost touch. I think they got to figure out what you always say when you're on TV, connecting with regular working class folk again.
Yeah, as the only senior Democratic consultant in the entire party who never went to college, I was a teenage father. I have a criminal record. I've lived a real life. It's made me be closer to the pain. So I'll write ads that look a little different. It doesn't mean that I'm smarter than you. It just means that I have a different life experiences. And what we do in our party a lot of times is we keep folks who don't look and act like the rest of us out of that because it gets involved in the power structure of the party. And we shouldn't worry about the power as much as we worry about the people. And the point of the New York Times article that you're talking about that was done by Shane Goldmacher was a gut punch for me as well. We all know that it's been happening, but it's also an opportunity to reset the party. I think getting rid of Donald Trump, getting rid of Joe Biden, getting rid of Kamala Harris, getting rid of Bill Clinton, getting rid of Barack Obama, all these folks who've been involved forever. Right? There's a new chance to reset the party. We'll do that with a new nominee in 28, but we also have to reset the way that we do voter registration. I've done voter registration programs for over 35 years, and there has been this industrial complex built around the money of nonprofits. It's mainly C3 tax deductible money.
Yeah.
That's not working anymore. What you described in this New York Times article and what we've seen shows that it's not working. We got to have partisan registration that tells people when we vote, we would like for you to join our party because we're for this. And we don't want you to be in their party because they're just for this. And this is what Donald Trump has done really well, is he's weaponized this grievance in people. He's given a victim. And then when you have a weak candidate like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, then you start seeing these registration trends over a longer period of time because the party hasn't lived in the values of what we're talking about. So the good news, Democrats, is that there's a pathway back because this pendulum will swing again. Now, it could swing just a little bit or it could swing a lot. And I think that there's an opportunity because of how unpopular lots of things that are, it could swing a lot. But Democrats have to first admit we've made some mistakes. People will forgive us. I'm living proof people will forgive you. And then show what the vision can be.
What's my new party? You've been in it forever. Give me one criticism. What's one single constructive criticism right now at this point in time, Chuck, you'd throw on the Democratic Party?
That we have too many consultants with master's degrees trying to figure out the messaging to working people. That's easy. That's the one. I can think of lots, and there's lots of things we do right, but that one thing, and let me be clear, these folks who are making these ads, these overeducated, well-intentioned people are good ad makers, and they are good consultants, but they've lived a life and been away from the pain so long ago. It was their father or their mother who worked in the mill. It was their grandfather who worked in the factory, right? And because of that, they've lived a pretty decent life. They have a house down at the beach. They have a house, like you would recognize, Joe, upstate in Wisconsin on a lake. And they have a decent life. Their kids go to private school, and they're good Democrats. And they are literally some of the best people I know. But when you have that class of people running all of the different campaigns, you don't have an entry point for a working class brown kid, black kid, or white kid who grew up in a trailer house in Louisiana or somewhere to come in and be like, well, this is the way the modern worker's looking at it. And with the new gig economy or with the internet, it's even different than when Chuck Rocha was doing Dick Gephardt as the labor goon in 2004. Things change.
Yeah. And I don't think, and maybe you disagree with me, my brother, Donald Trump is, in my bones, an existential threat to democracy, the rule of law. I think he's a tyrant. I don't think Democrats should ever stop talking that talk. I know we've got to talk other talk as well when it comes to affordability and jobs and all the rest. But I hope that we don't drop the threat and try to explain that to average folk, why we say that. Where are you on that, though? Maybe I emphasize that too much because I come from the Republican Party.
There's you get to bifurcate or split up. I don't know the fancy word. Some of your messaging. We do really well now with educated folks that live in the suburbs because they understand the existential threat of democracy more so than anybody because they've been to school, they've understand international relations, and they know if we're not fighting a war in Ukraine, we're going to fight it on our doorstep. Well, the folks who grew up in the trailer houses where I grew up in East Texas, they can't find Ukraine on a map because I know I can't. And I've been doing this a long time. They feel a separation there. And they don't, you say you're fighting for democracy, but what does democracy really mean to them? Or that Latino that came here and is quote unquote undocumented, who was a child, who's trying to live the American dream while this democracy wants to deport them to alligator Alcatraz.
Yes. Yeah.
These are where I think you can do both at the same time, all depending on who you're messaging to. That's where the strategist comes in.
Oh, Chuck, I think that's so freaking smart. I think Latinos, white, black, and brown folk believe if you've got a border, secure the border, defend the border. You're a violent criminal in this country illegally, get out. But what Trump is doing now, that's not what we are. That's not who we are. And I think you're right. I think putting that, the cruelty, putting that in front of regular folk, I think Democrats need to do.
And I think you'll see TV commercials around this. Is immigration the most important issue to Latino voters? Everybody watching this Substack right now, it is not. Yeah. But it is an emotional issue that the consultants miss because of the emotion in it.
Yeah.
If your parents immigrated here from Ireland and they went through Ellis Island, there's a story that's handed down around those Irish, Italian, Jewish immigrants who came to this country seeking the American dream. And you talk about it with your grandmother. You remember her being a little darker than the rest of you because she really came from Italy. All of these stories mean something to us. That's cultural competency. Even Republicans who hate to admit this, that's their identity politics. They identify with this story and it makes them, quote unquote, real Americans. Well, Latinos are just closer to that pain as well. They just haven't been here as long. Here's a statistic for you. The Latino voter in America is about 10 years, 12 years younger than every other voter because they just haven't been here as long. And when you're serving an English ad to an English-speaking Latino and you're assuming that they're watching the same TV, they're not because of the age difference. These are little things that are missed in strategic conversations on how we actually win and show up in a race. And I think this is some of the nuance when we talk about having consultants who understand a community of where we really need to go. Let me ask you, Joe, you've been around in DC a lot and what you're seeing now. I'd love your opinion, and I definitely have one, but I'm going to let you do yours first on what we're seeing right now with the DC National Guard and now the National Guard of all of these other states showing up in the nation's capital.
Washington, D.C., by almost every indicator, is the 20th or the 21st most violent city in America when it comes to violent crime. The 20th or the 21st. So why are there troops in D.C.? Why not in other cities? This is a show of force. It's an assertion of power by Trump. It's wrong. We don't do that here. We don't put the military on our streets against our citizens. We don't do that here. There's no crime emergency. And what I worry about, Chuck, is, and then I'll cede the floor to you, talking about your consultants, consultants say, and they've been telling me the last couple of weeks, hey, Joe, this is a bad issue for Democrats, crime. This is a good issue for Trump. Why don't we ought to just look the other way. Don't fight on this turf. To which I say, bullshit. Bullshit. Fight him. This is not what America is. There is no crime epidemic in Washington, D.C. I think you got to fight on this issue.
I agree. And I think you're right. And I think that there's a way you talk about it because Democrats, again, going back to these master's degree carrying consultants who want to nuance everything, there's a normal way to talk about crime. Now, let me be clear and let me draw the picture. I live in D.C. I'm married to a beautiful woman who is a fifth generation Washingtonian. I live in one of the poorest wards in the city. It's Ward 7. It takes in some of the east part of the Capitol Hill where I live and also goes across the river in some of the poorest areas, crime-ridden areas in the city. And have we had problems in the neighborhood with crime? Absolutely, like any other neighborhood. And have we worked with the local council and are we having safety meetings in the community? Do we work with our local police commander? I know all these things because we have had trouble, especially with some minors who aren't being punished or held responsible. And let's work on that and fix that problem because we want to be safe walking to and from the metro, right? So there's a way to do it. And I'm talking from experience. But what's happening before your eyes, boys and girls, is that it's somebody who wants to talk about crime so that they can make a TV commercial that says the following. And I promise you this is going to happen. I came in and promises made, promises kept. I got the border under control.
Yeah.
Our crime was out of control in our cities. I brought in the National Guard and cleaned up Washington, D.C., and I passed a big, beautiful bill that now you're not going to be taxed on your overtime. That's going to be the ad, boys and girls. They're doing this so they can take pictures of the National Guard Humvees in front of the Washington Monument and in front of the U.S. Capitol, because you can recognize those in the congressional seat in Michigan. And people be like, man, yeah, because they don't know no different. And because they watch Fox News or other things, they do think that there are armed militias of young kids with guns running around D.C. Are there kids with guns in D.C.? Sure. And let's lock them up. Let's hold them accountable. But having military in the street is not how you do that. And then the last thing I want to say about this topic is y'all need to remember, folks like me who live in Washington, D.C., I pay full federal income tax. I pay a 9.9% local tax that funds my city government on top of that. And I can't call my congressman or my senator to complain or to have them act on my behalf because I have no representation. Y'all should know that in America, in a place where we all have supposed to be joined together and doing this thing, there's no representation. And the people of D.C. are the only ones who can be pushed around like that. And it's almost on purpose, right, Joe?
Yeah. God, it's on purpose. It's completely on purpose. Again, Chuck, I think like immigration, and maybe you disagree with me, I think Democrats did not pay enough attention to the issue of immigration and the border, and it bit him in the ass, and Trump won, and now Trump has taken it to an ugly, dark, cruel, extreme, un-American place, and there's an opening there for Democrats to own the issue of immigration. I think the same issue of crime. I have no doubt Trump's taking it too far. He's putting the fucking military on our streets. He's going to try to do it in more than just DC. He did it in LA a month and a half ago, and our military men and women sat on their ass for 2 or 3 weeks. Democrats have become so, because Democrats, I think, Chuck, disagree with me, kind of didn't pay enough attention to street crime, it became a big issue for Republicans. But now Trump is going way too far with it. So again, Democrats, we can jump on this.
And think about this, boys and girls, that there's no national election in a year and a half or a year and 3 months. It's a congressional election and a Senate election, and a handful of governors are up. That's what this is about. All of this is about the midterms, because if Donald Trump loses the House of Representatives, or God forbid the Senate, they can start holding his administration accountable with hearings. I'm not saying that they should impeach him. I'm just saying that they could call people before the committees that Joe used to be on to hold them accountable. He does not want any accountability. That's why he's leaning into this. And let me make a second case as a guy who runs lots of congressional races. There's not a single marginal congressional race. And for those of you at home, marginal means it's a half Democrat, half Republican. Those are the ones that swing back and forth between the parties. There's not a single seat up for grabs in the next election that is in the inner city of any city in America. Every congressional seat in every inner city in every place in America is a safe Democratic seat. But every seat that's just on the outside of the city, in the suburbs of Philly, in the suburbs of Milwaukee, in the suburbs of Chicago, I could go on, in the suburbs of LA, all of those seats, a lot of those seats are very marginal seat where the actual races will be held. But I'm getting in the weeds because my people are nerds, Joe.
Continue.
All of the people in those suburbs are watching the same TV channel as the folks on the inside. So they're seeing the news of the murders in the city, right? So they think the inside of that city is out of control because there are crimes in major cities. So Donald Trump is smartly going to be able to tell the folks in the suburbs, those people in the city, AKA those black people or those Latino people are acting an ass. And I went in there and cleaned that up to try to get suburban people who've been dramatically moving towards the Democratic Party back into his party. That's the strategy here. Do you agree or disagree?
That's completely the strategy. The strategy is, you nailed it, Chuck. I shut down the border. Your streets are now safe. And Democrats have to fight those issues because, again, what Trump's doing with immigration is not who and what this country is. Do you want America? I mean, my God, every Democrat running for office this year should just ask that simple question. Is this what you want America to be? Do you want us going into Home Depot parking lots and grabbing day laborers? Yes or no? Yes or no? I mean, I think Democrats just got to be blunt and put those questions in front of these voters in the middle you're talking about.
I think that also that you bring some visualization to that epidemic. Because to your point earlier, Joe, there's not a focus group that I've done in the last 4 or 5 years where if you ask a Latino immigrant, if you come to this country and you kill somebody, you rape somebody, you create some kind of heinous crime, even an immigrant will say, yes, deport their ass, get them out of here. Nobody is against violent criminals being deported. But the thing that you're describing is not a violent criminal because they've run out of violent criminals. And now they're showing up to do this other. So you start finding some of those folks that have DACA. You find some of those folks that are U.S. citizens. You find some of them that have legal work permits where their families were separated, and you put them on a TV commercial in a suburban district going, is this the America you want? Jose's been here for 23 years. This is his daughter. She came here when she was 2. She is DACA. She's went to our elementary schools. We've educated her in our colleges, and she's now a science professor at this thing. There's many of them that work at my firm, Joe, and because of what we're living through in D.C., I'm making them work remotely. Get this, because I'm scared of their brown faces being seen in D.C. and picked up for whatever the cause. And that is not who we are as a country, and we have to tell that story. Ruben Gallego in the last election, and I was honored to be his general consultant, showed people how you can do this. And he got endorsed by border mayors. He said that we have to have a secure border while at the same time finding a humane way for work permits and for people to have status because we're not going to deport people and we're not going to lock them up. So let's do both at the same time. Let's secure our border and give folks a pathway to some kind of work status.
So right and so smart. And I think everybody listening to us right now, Chuck, needs to remember Barack Obama, in each of his terms, deported more people than Donald Trump did in his first term, and on average, more people than Donald Trump is deporting right now. And that may surprise people. But Barack Obama did it the right way. He went after violent criminals, and he deported people at the border when they came over the border illegally.
And they also got a hearing to make sure that—
They also got a hearing.
Right.
Trump, again, I go back to this word cruelty. Trump is doing what he's doing on purpose to scare people. He wants the film. He wants the videos. Now, I think it's going to backfire on him because, again, I think most Americans are sickened by what these masked ICE cops are doing on our streets. But Trump wants that visual.
And I think that that's the key, right? There's a way he could have done this and he could have still been on message about being tough on the border. And as a consultant, I could see the path. But you go too far when you have masked men in unmarked cars disappearing people, and then they show up in El Salvador in a prison. You build a prison in the middle of the Everglades. These things are where it reminds me, Joe. Now, look, I'm a little bit of a redneck. No, excuse me. I'm a lot of redneck. I've been in way more fistfights than I have been in book clubs. And so I can tell when somebody's trying to act tough. My papa used to say, don't worry about the guy talking about how he's going to whoop your ass. Worry about the guy in the corner who ain't saying nothing because he will whoop your ass. And this is a bunch of guys who are trying to act tough who ain't tough. And when you try to act tough, you overextend and you go too far to where when regular folks, voters, see that there are people with masks on grabbing in D.C. yesterday, a delivery driver on a moped who's got, he's from Venezuela, but he had a work permit, right?
Yes.
But because he was brown and he was on a scooter, he gets tackled. Like, I think those stories brought to light through smart messaging to people, coupled with watch what they do, not what they say. They're causing the cost of your everyday things to go up. They're cutting your Medicaid, and they are showing up like third world country policemen with unmarked vehicles disappearing people. That's the recipe for a blue tsunami in the off year if you message it right.
Answer me this, my favorite tough son of a bitch consultant. The average Democrat running for Congress next year, how much of their campaign should be spent on attacking Republicans, or this is what I'm for? I'm not a consultant. I've been a candidate. I think Democrats should be 80% firing at what these Republicans are doing and 20% here I am. Maybe that's extreme. What's your thought?
There's a middle ground, but the way that I look at strategies based off of the folks that live there, there are these marginal seats around Philadelphia, marginal seats around Chicago, where folks are way more college educated. They get it more than the three marginal seats that are in the Central Valley of California, which is the breadbasket, you know, where it is
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
Fresno and Bakersfield.
Yeah.
Some of the poorest Latino seats. And those people have been so forgotten about. They'll vote for a Republican because they're just frustrated at the Democrats who haven't really
Yeah.
done a very good job at Latino outreach, right? So to answer your point, it should be closer to 50-50, but in places where you have a marginal congressional seat with lots of college educated, you don't have to do as much going after Trump because they know, because they're watching it on Twitter, because they're on
Yeah.
Twitter.
Yeah.
The people picking your groceries in the Central Valley have no idea what Donald Trump is doing. Those people, you need to not only show how he's deporting and disappearing people, but show them what he's doing through tariffs and other things that are
Yeah.
making the cost of your living going up. Lumber from Canada going up, sheetrock from Mexico. So when we need to build something, Mexicans understand build something. When you want to build something, it's going to cost more money. And if you have a carne asada on the weekend, guess what's really been going up? The price of beef. So if we live in those places and do that piece the smart way, I think that the recipe tells itself between those two. That's really the two kind of marginal seats they are.
And the farmers, Chuck, the farm
Ugh.
workers that he's grabbing, the farm workers that he's grabbing.
Chasing through the fields?
I mean, again, I'm not smart on this stuff, but I got to believe those images are going to reach average voters this next year or so. I've got to believe it.
The polling really says that. This new Equis poll I keep hyping up, it was released yesterday because it's just like, it's number porn for a guy like me who loves the numbers. And it showed what we thought it would show is that people, Latinos that voted for Donald Trump, have been disgusted about what they've seen. About a quarter of the people that they talked to said that Latino marginal voters, it's important for y'all to remember that they were regretting their vote for Trump. They weren't, some of them ready to walk away from him yet. Some of them said they were worried about it, but it showed an opening that we all thought was there, this polling. But a lot of that was because of two factors. One, I was promised cheaper cost of living. I have not felt that. That's A. But B, to your point, Joe, these images of what he's doing to our community and food trucks and day laborers and these kind of people, I think that's the real Achilles heel because they're leaning into something that voters. Now, this is not the mass of America. This is voters. And it's really important for y'all to know this. It's just voters that's going to live in about 30 places because that's where all these congressional races are going to be, 3 Senate races and 4 governor's races. That's the only thing that's really going to be marginal this off cycle.
That's really it, isn't it, Chuck? It's that narrow, isn't it?
Yes, because we don't have that. We don't have a national election. We've allowed the Republicans to have a national narrative that is so much better than Democrats. When I would go into focus groups and I would say, give me 2 words for Donald Trump. And they would say strong and crazy. And I'd say, give me 2 words for Joe Biden. And they'd say weak and old.
Yeah.
And that stuck like an anchor around every congressional person that I was running in. And then when Kamala got in, the numbers corrects itself by half. So if Biden was down 10, she closes the gap in 5. And I got to see a lot of polling, but she couldn't ever close the deal because they're so much better at the messaging piece of this. We have so many ads running that weren't resonating, even though we spent all this money because we're too cute plus 2 with the way that we do these campaigns, is that we got to get back to being more simple.
Yeah.
What are we for? What are they doing to hurt you? And then making sure that we're running those in places where people are actually getting at. We're getting towards the end of this thing. Let me ask you about what you're seeing from folks. Now, you have seen this from such a unique angle, going from Tea Party to being anti-Trump to joining the Democratic Party. Do you see Democrats learning from the mistakes that you've seen in the Republican Party? And what kind of gives you hope that things could be correcting itself as we think about Donald Trump?
I'll answer it by this. So this former crazy Tea Party guy became a Democrat 2 months ago. And how have I been received by the Democratic Party? I think this answers your question. Generally, Democratic voters and grassroots folks, even though they disagree with me on some issues, they've embrace me. Welcome to the fight, Joe. Let's save democracy. Boom, boom, boom. The grassroots has embraced me. The Democratic establishment and leadership has been a little more wary. So I don't think the leadership of the party understands what you're talking about right now, but I think Democratic voters do. I think they get this moment. They want fighters. They want fighters. Not necessarily, I almost even don't care where you stand on the issues. And I think that, look, Gavin Newsom's having his moment right now, but I think Democrats are learning how to fight, to be advocates and to fight for the shit you think we should be talking about. That gives me hope.
I couldn't agree with you more. And for those of you that have been nice enough to log on, make sure you're following Joe's Substack and being a subscriber.
By the way, Chuck, let me interrupt you. For everybody listening right now who subscribes to me, get off your ass and subscribe to Chuck. Chuck and our other partner in crime, Mike Madrid, who I adore. You two are the smart, not just when it comes to Latino voters, when it comes to Democratic voters and their behavior. Chuck Rocha and Mike Madrid are awesome. Everybody subscribe to Chuck.
I appreciate it. I've got like 15 followers now. I'll follow you, I promise. Also, I'll say that for those of you thinking about how we fix the problem of the party, think about Joe. Think about him being from where he's from. Think about him being a former Tea Partier. Think about the opposite end of that scale of a Mexican redneck kid growing up in a trailer house in East Texas. My mama was 15. I had a kid myself and all the things you know about me. And now we're both in the party. This is a big party. And we need to accept all the pieces of our party. All these pieces you won't like. All these pieces you're not going to agree with. But you need all of these pieces to actually win elections. And my point is over the last 20 years, I've watched the Democratic Party get way too smart for its own good. And what I mean by that is we spend more and more money to talk to less and less people because of micro-targeting, modeling, and algorithms.
Yeah.
We think we have it all figured out because we have these tech bros and other folks in our party who know how to do things wisely. Do you want to go talk to somebody who's never voted and who's never even registered? Okay. Maybe not. That's cool. But maybe there's somebody who's registered, who's voted every now and then, but because they're not a prime voter, they're not part of a universe where they ever get to hear our message. This is the key. That's the Joe Walsh out there. That's the Chuck Rocha. Not because they don't want to be a Democrat or they hate or love Donald Trump. Maybe they just have a life that's gotten in the way. Maybe something has happened with their wife or their husband or with one of their kids. We need to spend more time talking to more people and talking about the things that bring us together. Because if a former Republican from Michigan and a former factory worker from East Texas can be on a Substack now, people pay us to be on TV. We get to do all this stuff. It shows you beyond a shadow of a doubt that the American dream is actually still alive. We've just stopped talking to people about it. I think that's the key, right, Joe?
Amen, brother. Big tent, big tent. It's got to be big enough for you and I. And in between you and I, there are a hell of a lot of.
Oh, my God. So many smart, better looking people than me and you. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this week. We'll be back next week with the Rocha Revolution. Y'all better get over there and get on Joe's Substack. I'm going to kick all your ass. Love you. See you soon.
Bye, guys.